Forget everything you think you know about the Silk Road, because the real story is wilder than the legends. Spies, secrets, and treasures that shaped empires, all hidden in plain sight for centuries. Welcome to Past Professor, where history isn't just told, it's uncovered. Whispers in the Emperor's Court. The marble corridors of the Han Dynasty's imperial palace glistened in the pale light of dawn, the air thick with the scent of sandalwood incense. Behind the golden doors of the Hall of Everlasting Harmony, the young Emperor Zhao sat alone on his jade throne, his silk robes pooling like shadows at his feet. Outside, the court still believed him a boy king, too young, too idealistic to alter the course of the empire. But inside his mind, a daring plan was taking shape. Rumors had reached the palace of lands far beyond the western deserts, kingdoms rich with treasures, strange animals, and knowledge unknown to China. Zhao's scholars spoke of fabrics that shimmered like sunlight on water, spices worth their weight in gold, and metals that could shape weapons of unmatched power. But more than wealth, Zhao dreamed of a network that could unite distant civilizations under the glory of Han influence. Summoning his most trusted counsel, Zhao spoke in a low, measured tone. "We will open a road beyond the horizon, not for conquest, but for connection." His words were dangerous. Expanding the empire's reach meant stirring ancient rivalries and awakening enemies long thought dormant. Among the assembled advisors stood Chancellor Ardashir, tall, dignified, and always watchful. The court knew him as a loyal servant, a man whose wisdom could calm storms in the emperor's heart. What no one knew was that Ardashir was not entirely Han by blood. Born to a Persian mother and raised in the borderlands, he had been cultivated by Persian envoys since boyhood, trained to weave loyalty with deception. The moment Zhao's plan took form, Ardashir saw an opportunity, not to serve the Han, but to serve the hidden agenda of his true masters in Ctesiphon. That night, as the moon cast silver over the palace gardens, the emperor signed a secret decree funding an expedition westward. The scroll, sealed with vermilion wax, was entrusted to Ardashir himself. He bowed deeply, hiding the flicker of a smile. In the shadows, a new artery of the world was about to be born, one that would carry not just silk and spices, but whispers of betrayal. The merchant with two faces. The oasis city of Samarkand shimmered like a jewel under the desert sun. Its turquoise domes and crowded bazaars drew travelers from every corner of the known world. Persian rug makers, Indian spice sellers, Greek physicians, and nomads leading camels laden with gold and gems. The air was thick with competing scents: rosewater, roasted lamb, and the sharp bite of saffron. It was here, amid this chaos of color and noise, that Kasra ibn Nadir made his entrance. Kasra was a man whose smile could disarm a prince and whose eyes could strip a man of his secrets. Dressed in embroidered silk that whispered of wealth, he spoke the tongues of 5 nations and seemed to know the unspoken rules of every culture. To the merchants of Samarkand, he was a rising star, a man who could bring the finest silks from the east faster than anyone else. To the city's noble houses, he was a charming guest at every feast, telling stories so vivid that listeners swore they could smell the rain in the Chinese mountains. But the silks were just his mask. Hidden among the bolts of fabric he carried were manuscripts outlawed by 3 empires, writings on astronomy, statecraft, and weapon design, each capable of shifting the balance of power if it reached the right hands. Kasra was not merely a trader. He was a courier for information that could topple dynasties. One evening, beneath the lantern-lit arches of the House of Blue Tiles, Kasra shared wine with Governor Sogdian, a man whose ambitions were as wide as the steppe. The governor's daughter laughed at Kasra's tales, her silver bracelets chiming with every movement. All seemed light-hearted, until a slip of parchment fell from Kasra's sleeve. It was quickly covered by his hand, but not before a servant noticed the strange script. Neither Chinese nor Persian, but something rarer. The servant's eyes narrowed. He had seen such writing only once before, on a map said to lead to the gates of the West, guarded by a forgotten fortress. Kasra's easy smile never wavered, but inside, he knew the game had changed. Somewhere in the city, the wrong pair of eyes had spotted a clue to his true mission. And in Samarkand, Secrets had a way of selling for more than gold. The monk's dangerous cargo. The wind-swept passes of the Pamir Mountains were no place for the faint-hearted. Snow clung to the jagged peaks like the bones of giants, and the air was so thin it burned the lungs. Yet through this treacherous path trudged a lone figure in saffron robes, Brother Tenzin, a Buddhist monk from Nalanda, carrying a bundle that could change the fate of empires. To the casual eye, his satchel contained only sacred scriptures, palm leaf manuscripts wrapped in silk, heavy with the scent of sandalwood. But concealed within the folds was something far more dangerous. A blueprint for papermaking, stolen from a guarded workshop deep within China's borders. Its inked diagrams, drawn in exquisite precision, showed the process that could make knowledge flow faster than armies, faster than silk, faster than gold. Whoever possessed it could flood the world with books, laws, and propaganda, and control the minds of millions. Brother Tenzin had not intended to be a thief. The blueprint had been entrusted to him by a dying scholar, whose last words spoke of freeing knowledge from imperial hoarding. But in 3 capitals, Chang'an, Bactra, and Baghdad, shadow agents had already been dispatched to intercept him. At a roadside monastery, Tenzin paused to rest, chanting softly before a small shrine. A group of travelers entered, offering tea and conversation. Among them, a veiled woman asked too many questions about his route. When she smiled, he caught a glimpse of a blade tucked into her belt. That night, as the wind howled through the pass, Tenzin awoke to the crunch of boots outside his cell. Silently, he slipped out the back, clutching the satchel to his chest. From the shadows emerged 2 figures, one wearing the sigil of the Han Imperial Guard, the other bearing the crescent insignia of the Abbasid Caliphate. They exchanged a nod. Enemies in name, allies in pursuit. Tenzin knew then that the blueprint's value was greater than he had ever imagined. And as the first snow began to fall, he vanished into the night, unaware that his path would soon cross with Kasra ibn Nadir, and that together, they might hold the key to both salvation and ruin. It grew softer, their glances longer. Rashid would tell her of coral palaces beneath the Indian Ocean, and she would counter with tales of the plum blossoms in Chang'an. Each night, the distance between them closed, until the mere passing of his hand near hers sent a ripple through her chest. But their growing closeness did not go unnoticed. One evening, as Maylene walked among the tents, she overheard 2 guards whispering, "If the Emperor's envoy's daughter is seen with him, the court will call it treason," one said. "She is the future binding of East and West. Her marriage will be a treaty, not a choice." That night, Rashid found her alone by the caravan's water well. He pressed a small carved charm into her palm, an amulet said to protect travelers from betrayal. "We are watched," he said quietly, "and not only by your father's men. There are others, following this caravan for reasons I do not yet know." Love in the caravan shadows. The caravan had been moving for days, winding through the ochre dunes of the Kizilkum Desert. Camels groaned under loads of silk, spice, and glassware, their bells chiming like distant prayers. At the center of the procession rode Lady Maylene, the only daughter of the Han Empire's envoy to the west. Her caravan guards rode in a tight formation, eyes scanning the horizon for raiders, but Maylene's gaze was elsewhere. She had noticed him the moment he joined the caravan in Kashgar. Rashid al-Khayyam, an Arab navigator with sun-browned skin, a voice like desert wind, and eyes that held the memory of far-off seas. He was hired to guide the caravan through the most treacherous stretches of the Silk Road, but he carried himself like a man who had once commanded ships and men. At first, their conversations were polite exchanges, discussions of routes, weather, and trade customs. But under the moonlit nights by the campfires, their words grew. What neither of them realized was that among those shadowing the caravan was Kasra ibn Nadir, passing himself off as a traitor. And somewhere far ahead, in the mountain passes, Brother Tenzin was making his way toward the same city they were bound for. The Silk Road was narrowing, and their paths were beginning to converge. The plague in the saddlebag. It began with something so small no one in the caravan noticed. In a dusty market square on the outskirts of Bokhara, a fur merchant argued over the price of a sable pelt. The animal had been trapped in the northern forests, its coat rich and warm, perfect for nobles in colder lands. But nestled deep in the tangled fur, feeding unseen, was a single flea, its belly swollen with the blood of an infected rodent. By nightfall, the fur changed hands twice, first to a Kazakh trader, then to a caravan quartermaster. It was packed away with other goods, pressed between silk bundles in the belly of a camel's saddlebag. The journey westward continued, unremarkable at first. But within days, a stable boy in the caravan camp developed a sudden fever. His skin flushed red, his pulse quickened, and he complained of a strange ache in his bones. The camp physician, an old man with failing eyes, diagnosed it as desert exhaustion. But by the following morning, the boy could no longer stand, and a swelling the size of a peach had formed under his arm. The physician ordered the boy isolated, but the camp was a world of constant movement. Merchants trading, camels being loaded, guards sharing waterskins. The sickness traveled faster than the orders to contain it. A spice dealer coughed over his wares, a drover stumbled and fell in the dust, and within a week, a shadow of dread settled over the caravan. Unaware of the danger, Lady Maylene and Rashid Al-Khayyam continued their quiet meetings at night, though Rashid now kept glancing toward the medical tent, his brow furrowed. Kasra ibn Nadir, ever watchful, had already noticed the pattern. The illness struck those who had touched certain cargo he had seen loaded in Bokhara. And far ahead, in the crowded bazaars of Merv, Brother Tenzin was preparing to pass through the same route. The flea's journey was only beginning, but already the threads of the Silk Road were carrying more than goods and secrets. They were carrying death itself. The scholar's betrayal. In the domed observatory of Moraga, the night sky burned with 1,000 points of light. Bronze astrolabes glinted in the lamplight, their polished curves mapping the heavens with exquisite precision. Bent over a parchment, Alam Qadr, the most celebrated astronomer of the Silk Road, traced a careful line from east to west, his reed pen whispering across the page. These were no ordinary star charts. Hidden in their celestial patterns was something more valuable than gold. A coded map of trade routes, caravan schedules, and mountain passes known only to a handful of rulers. Whoever controlled these routes controlled the flow of wealth, ideas, and armies across half the world. When the knock came at his chamber door, Alam did not look up. "Enter," he said. A tall, cloaked figure stepped inside, a European envoy with a diplomatic seal hanging from a chain. The man smiled, his tone smooth as honey. "I come on behalf of those who would pay generously for the wisdom of the stars." Alam hesitated. The maps were his life's work, his gift to the future. But the envoy's offer was staggering. Enough gold to rebuild the city's great library, destroyed in the last war. And yet, the voice in the back of his mind whispered of danger, how knowledge in the wrong hands could redraw borders in blood. In the end, the gold spoke louder. By the next morning, the star charts were rolled, sealed, and exchanged for a heavy purse. Only after the envoy departed did Alam notice the second scroll he had unwittingly given away, the one containing plague reports from caravan stations along the northern routes. Information that could steer an army clear of sickness, or direct the sick straight into enemy cities. Days later, news reached Moraga of strange fevers in Bokhara, Merv, and beyond. Alam's stomach nodded as he realized the truth. The envoy's masters would use his maps not just to conquer land, but to weaponize the very plague now moving westward. In a fit of panic, Alam sent riders to warn Kasra ibn Nadir, the only man he trusted to navigate the chaos. But the message would arrive too late. The game had already shifted, and the Silk Road's invisible war had begun. Empire at knife point. Under the vast sweep of the Mongol Empire, the Silk Road had never been safer, or so it seemed. The Pax Mongolica brought guarded caravans, repaired roads, and garrisons at every mountain pass. Merchants whispered that you could travel from the Pacific to the Mediterranean with a single gold coin in your pocket and never fear a thief. But peace was an illusion, and in the shadow of the Khan's throne, General Corbin sharpened his ambitions like a blade. A veteran of 100 battles, Corbin commanded the garrisons along the richest stretches of the Silk Road, his soldiers loyal to him above the empire itself. He had begun quietly diverting taxes meant for the great Khan's coffers, funneling the silver into his private war chest. But silver alone could not unseat an emperor. He needed chaos, something that would make the Khan's rule seem weak. That opportunity came when reports reached him of a strange sickness moving along the northern trade routes, cutting down both peasants and nobility. Corbin saw in the plague not a curse, but a weapon. Through bribed caravan masters, he manipulated travel permits, ensuring infected caravans entered certain rival cities, while healthy ones were redirected to his allies. The result was devastating. Rival governors begged for relief, while Corbin's territory thrived, its markets swelling with goods stolen from abandoned towns. At the same time, he sent envoys in secret to Kasra ibn Nadir, offering protection in exchange for intelligence about Western politics. And though Kasra played the part of a neutral merchant, he sensed the general's ambitions, and recognized the danger of a man who could move both armies and disease with a pen stroke. In the Khan's court at Karakoram, Corbin bowed low, pledging loyalty even as he planned to overthrow the empire. His strategy was simple: starve the Khan's treasury, weaken his allies, and crown himself the new ruler of a unified Silk Road. But he underestimated the web already tightening around him. Threads spun not by soldiers, but by spies, lovers, monks, and merchants whose fates were converging faster than he could see. The Venetian Gambit. The canals of Venice shimmered under a pale moon, gondolas drifting like shadows through the mist. In a quiet, lantern-lit room overlooking the Grand Canal, Lorenzo di Conti, a young explorer and trader, pored over letters from distant lands. Each one told of riches, alliances, and betrayals along the Silk Road, a network that had grown more dangerous with every passing season. Lorenzo's obsession was personal. Years ago, a caravan he was traveling with had been ambushed in Persia, his family's wealth stolen, his father killed. Now, armed with knowledge, ambition, and a thirst for revenge, he sought the ultimate leverage: military secrets, trade routes, and alliances that could shift the balance of power. When an Ottoman envoy approached him with a deal, Lorenzo's pulse quickened. Safe passage through the Eastern Mediterranean, generous funding, and a promise of influence, if he shared what he knew about the Silk Road, its guarded cities, and vulnerable garrisons. It was an offer dripping with danger. Betray the empire he had once admired, or risk death and failure. Lorenzo accepted. He became a double agent of sorts, carefully weaving stories to protect himself while feeding the Ottomans just enough truth to advance their interests. Yet even as he maneuvered, he could not ignore the whispers of the plague moving westward, the secret ambitions of General Corbin, and the mysterious travelers, Kasra and Brother Tenzin, whose paths seemed to intersect with his at every turn. Every decision carried weight. A single misstep could unravel his carefully laid plans, cost him his life, and tip the balance of power across continents. And as he packed maps, letters, and coins into a hidden chest, Lorenzo realized the Silk Road was no longer merely a trade route. It was a battlefield of loyalty, greed, and survival, with stakes far higher than any Venetian could imagine. The Silk Road's last stand. The desert sun hung low over the Turkestan plains, casting long shadows across the caravans and fortresses that had once been the lifeblood of the Silk Road. Trade routes were faltering as maritime passages from the Indian Ocean rose in prominence, and the merchants and warlords who relied on the overland road knew that this was their last chance to survive. A council was called under the banners of neutrality, but neutrality was a fragile illusion. Kasra ibn Nadir presided over the meeting with a merchant's charm, while Brother Tenzin and his sacred manuscripts lay carefully guarded, their knowledge too valuable to leave unprotected. Lady Maylene and Rashid al-Khayyam watched from the shadows, wary of the men and women whose ambitions had brought them here. Even Lorenzo di Conti, Venetian and opportunist, had traveled east with secrets that could topple alliances, or secure them forever. At the heart of the council, General Corbin paced, his eyes glinting like steel. He had moved armies, manipulated plague routes, and corrupted trade lines, and now he demanded allegiance or else. The air was thick with tension, every whispered deal carrying the weight of life and death. Voices rose and fell like the desert winds. Accusations flew, betrayals, bribes, and alliances laid bare. The plague, once an invisible threat, now cast a pall over the gathering, a grim reminder that the road itself could betray them all. When a caravan guard collapsed, the council erupted into panic, scrambling to seal routes and protect their people. In the chaos, hidden agendas collided. Kasra maneuvered silently, ensuring manuscripts and trade secrets fell into hands that would preserve balance. Tenzin, eyes blazing, demanded that sacred knowledge not be exploited for power. Maylene and Rashid took bold risks to protect innocence, while Lorenzo leveraged the chaos to secure his escape with just enough information to survive and thrive. By nightfall, the council was broken, alliances fractured, and the Silk Road itself had changed forever. Empires would rise, others fall, and the surviving threads of connection would carry the memory of this final stand across continents for generations. The road that had once linked civilizations now bore scars of ambition, love, betrayal, and death. And for those who had walked it, the choices made here would echo long after the dust settled. Threads of the present. Centuries had passed, yet the echoes of the Silk Road remained alive. The deserts, mountains, and bustling cities remembered every secret, every betrayal, every love that had once threaded their paths. Now, in the age of global trade and high-speed rail, a new vision rose. China's Belt and Road Initiative, a modern resurrection of the ancient arteries that had once carried silk, spices, and secrets across continents. Modern planners and engineers poured billions into roads, ports, and pipelines, believing they were forging connections of commerce and diplomacy. But history had a way of repeating itself. Families whose ancestors had wielded influence along the Silk Road still held grudges, rivalries, and alliances, hidden beneath the veneer of modernity. Business meetings and trade summits became chessboards for power plays older than any treaty. In the shadows, descendants of merchants, generals, and scholars, perhaps unaware of their heritage, began to influence decisions. Whispers of old maps, hidden manuscripts, and secret alliances resurfaced, guiding deals and rivalries. The ghosts of Kasra ibn Nadir, Brother Tenzin, Lorenzo di Conti, Lady Maylene, and even General Corbin seemed to linger in strategy rooms and corridors of power, their choices echoing through modern infrastructure and politics. And while trains sped across deserts and ships glided along new routes, subtle signs warned that the road could still betray those who underestimated it. Ancient blood feuds, old rivalries, and the unquenchable thirst for wealth and influence remained as potent as ever. The Silk Road had evolved, but its soul, the interplay of ambition, love, betrayal, and survival, remained unchanged. As the sun set over a modern harbor, connecting east and west with steel and concrete, one truth was clear. The Silk Road had never truly ended. Its threads still pulled at the world, unseen yet irresistible, weaving a tapestry of human ambition that no map or treaty could ever fully contain. The past and present had converged, and somewhere, in the shadows of modern trade and politics, the stories of those who had walked the ancient road were waiting to ignite once more. The Silk Road was never just a road. It was a river of ambition, a corridor of secrets, and a bridge between hearts and empires. Lovers met, scholars betrayed, and generals schemed, all under the same endless sky. And though centuries have passed, its threads still weave through our world, unseen but undeniable. Every trade route, every alliance, every whispered secret carries the echo of those who walked before us. The Silk Road didn't just connect continents. It connected civilizations, and it continues to shape the destiny of all who dare to follow its path. So next time you hold a silk scarf, taste an exotic spice, or trace a map across the mountains and deserts, remember, you are touching a story far older and far more dangerous than any of us can fully know. The road remains, and its story is far from over.